Hello, friends. I'm Ajay Saini, and today in the Business Navigation series with me is Dr. Shree Nanguneri, who is the CEO and founder of Millennium Global Business Solutions. And he has, decades of experience helping various businesses finding out the issues, how to solve those, and how to, go towards optimization. So we are here this evening, and Dr. Nanguneri, how are you doing?
Thank you very much. Doing very well, and really appreciate you having me here. It's a privilege.
And I'm really happy to have you because looking at your resume, you have done so many things over the course of your career and helping different businesses with all kinds of things. And it's your Six Sigma approach. It's not for a specific industry. Any organization that is looking for some kind of help, you are able to identify the problems and all. So why don't we start with this? How come you end up, opening Millennium Global Business Solutions? What was the driver behind, and what made you think that okay, this is what I should be doing?
Oh, thank you for asking. First of all, it's not me who did this. It's a whole combination of mentors and coaches and partners that enable me in my career success, and most importantly, in the transition between a full-time job and to consulting. It never was quite a step function, but it was actually a gradual slope. So that allowed me to appreciate how I can turn around and assist others if they want to make such a transition. The second reason was my first project experience at GE Plastics, where when I completed the project and then I was continuing in GE Plastics, and suddenly they had an option to go to GE Plastics in India. And then there they needed the black belt, the Lean Six Sigma role. However, it was not about manufacturing or technology, which was what in Americas. It was supporting about 25 employees in sales, marketing, customer service, a whole spectrum. So there it allowed me to say, okay, the principle is universal. So when I came back to the US in 1998, wife and I, that was the best solution at that point to navigate our careers together, because dual income career, right? So that we don't go this way, but kind of at least go parallel in our career choices and personal choices. And the industry was there. It was there. It was consulting opportunities were there, where they would actually accept people to come work consulting full-time, remote, and have to relocate. And you go to the customer's location and you come back to the customer. And so you travel and get this done, right? And then time came from one of my peers said, why don't you just do this for us, if you want to come away from this type of employment consultant. I said, sure, I'd like to do that, because you don't gather consultants. So that happened in 2000. Okay, between 2000 and 2001, that 1 year of full-time job consultancy, and then the time it happened. And it also happened to be my mentor, who was my partner, who's still my partner. And it's quite a privilege. And then the rest is history, with people bringing customers all the way from GE Plastics in India. They're referring me to their best friends in other industries. And that just went from one place to another. I was very fortunate to be in the midst of that, and even to have this good relationship even till today. So that happened to me. So each person's journey is different, and it can happen for others. It's a matter of taking the time and doing it, like anything else, right?
Right.
So it is a combination of several people.
Yeah. And you have clients in over 30 countries, right?
Well, worked with clients in over 30 countries.
Yeah.
They're not existing clients.
Yeah.
With clients, yes. And then one of those clients from 2008 is coming back. So now with technology, what we can do. But yes, clients and the relationships at least are still intact, at least on a personal level or on LinkedIn, from all those 5-6 continents.
Right. Yeah, the reason I brought it up was mainly to highlight that from your point of view, you are just able to go and help a company that may be here in US, where you are based out of, or it could be anywhere else. And also the type of company or organization doesn't matter. You have been helping different types of organizations, right?
Correct. In fact, at one point in time, there was in one particular industry, they said, if you're not a mechanical engineer by experience, how are you going to understand a product? So then I said, obviously, I can't say to him that I don't need to be, that would be kind of belittling him when we didn't develop the relationship. This is in another country, another continent, another language, another culture. So I said, we know that your current mechanical engineers are not able to solve this problem. Those are facts. We already know, we also know, because I was doing this for the supply chain of my customer. They said, go to supply chain. We know that my customer, which is your customer, is not going to send somebody that is incapable of working with you. And we know there's a track record. You can go look up my track record of companies where, excepting GE Plastics and a couple others, they're all non-polymer science technology type of companies. So now the question is, what are the odds that I will fail with your support working in an environment which is mechanical engineering that is not part of my background?
Right.
They said, okay, all right, okay, you convinced me. So I said, so let's work on a pilot. And then it turned out to be successful. Then he came back and said, now I realize that it's not the subject matter expertise of that process, but it's the subject matter expertise of how to, the leadership, the problem solving, and the team building, and getting the subject matter expertise from the team. They already have that. And
Right.
what are all the things, tools that they need to use to solve the problem? So that happened 2009. And then, so is the way is to bring simplicity to the customer by enrolling them rather than trying to sell them, or
Right.
trying to not talk to them, but ask questions. Why are you concerned? What makes you think? That way it's more collaborative. And that was a game changer for me when my mentor said, you need to start thinking about asking and not telling.
Right.
Because asking creates that camaraderie and the collaboration rather than when you tell, even if you tell you're honest and innocent, it is looked upon as if you know more than them. So you want to avoid them, particularly with people you don't know or you don't have, that you're not developed a relationship with. Once you develop the relationship, it's a different environment, right?
Yeah.
So that was a game changer for me since then. So that's how it has happened in different industries.
So can you please highlight, like, typically when people reach out to you, they may have, like, 5 problems or 1 problem, doesn't matter, but they may come up with some symptoms or some kind of a question that, okay, hey, I'm having this issue, can you help me? So what are some of the typical problems they come up with, or they think that's the problem, that you say, okay, I know what you're talking, and then you guide them in terms of, to, like, finding the real issue behind.
Right. So there are, we give them two choices. One is we can be the problem solver. We get in there, like a bunch of, not belittling the name Marines, like get in there, solve the problem, disassemble and leave. So
Okay.
solve the problem, we'll even sustain it. But what if another problem comes? So that
Mhm.
means we got to leave some kind of marine type of skills in them. Right? They go in there and get it. So if you want that, then I would rather transform the skills to them.
Mhm.
So in the pilot project, we would get in their hands dirty and we would fix the problems with them. Then
Okay.
we sit back and say, hey, don't you need this skill? Because you don't need to be coming back to me, although I like it, but you want some kind of place where you can just terminate this umbilical cord and do things on it. Then they say yes. Then we have what is called a training and a deployment initiative, where we get projects under each of those employees and we show them how to solve their problems, leaving them with the skills transferred.
Right.
So typically the problems are processes that they've been running
Okay.
and defects that they're not able to solve, usually because of manual intervention, because manual intervention you can never duplicate, right? Variation, reproducibility, repeatability. So it require them to make it systemic. We're talking 10, 12 years ago.
Okay.
Or it would be something that the supplier is causing that they're not able to control, and say you're giving the wrong product and they're saying you are not using it right, that back and forth. Right? So then we need to be a liaison between the supplier and the customer and saying, bring data to the table. And once they bring the data to the table and they have the log, then the rest you hear, oh, geez, I didn't realize that. Oh, I wish I knew that, right? So one of the most important philosophies is leave the skills and the experience at the door and bring your data to the table. Okay, that has been an excellent way to normalize that relationship, Ajay, as you get in, because total stranger.
Yeah.
Rather than even if I knew that, never say, hey, I know what's happening, because every process is different, particularly every culture is different. There's an old saying that culture will eat strategy for lunch. So they got to be sensitive to that each of those experiences are unique. So yeah, typically variation control. Okay, once the variation goes wide, it crosses the spec limits and you start getting defects. So if I'm doing this 90% of the time correctly, then I'm supposed to know what I'm doing correct.
Yeah.
Before I know, only then I'll know what I'm doing wrong. And I'm supposed to know what I'm doing correct. That is on a log that everybody can see. So most places don't have a proper process log. 5-10 years automation, data is flowing. We are talking earlier, right? So then now with automation, you see data is missing. And that's not a good sign, right? So that means we have to work with the data structure person, the data analyst of today, need to work with the data structure engineer way upstream so that you don't have missing data, null data, zero values, right? And they're saying we'll just process mine. The answer is too late to process mine. So in today's world of automation, that's another challenge as to how to get them to work with the data structure. So that is what you find: measurement systems, errors, reproducibility. Very rarely it's about going to a new product. It's always about the existing process. How can we fix it so that it's done and it's predictable?
Yeah.
So it's a common occurrence in any process you talk about. Routine.
Yeah, very interesting. You are also very fond of 3Ds. Would you like to share?
I came up with that phrase because that was the way in which everybody acknowledges defects, defective product or service, non-defective, however, delay in delivering, non-defective and not delayed, however, up and down. Sometimes there are defects, sometimes there are delays, sometimes there are defects. So inconsistency, right? So the defects can be converted to delight when we fix it. The delays can be converted to deliverables when we meet the time, just in time, not too early, not too late, right? And Dell came up with that. And the deviations, the variation we're talking about, variation control, is taught to reduce the consistency. And when you do those three things, deviations of at least $2, is that revenue goes up and your internal idling cost, internal operation cost goes down. And when you reduce your inconsistency, both of these become consistent throughout the year. It's not like Christmas, we sell well, and then January go, as an example.
Yeah.
It's seasonal. It should become part of the DNA of that culture. And about 10-15 years ago, we are talking about systemic thinking, which actually Dr. Shingo mentioned back in the 1930s, is to create systemic thinking, which means have systems in place so that a person can have a false procedure and violate it. It's called mistake proof, poke-yoke in Japanese, right? Is to poke-yoke, right? We have so many of the systems in place. So that has been very useful in dealing with data analysts today, automated systems on how to get them to work with data architects and make sure the right data is flowing. Data is where it all begins. When you have uncontaminated data, you can make decisions with a high probability of success. Okay, that's why bringing data to the table and keeping everything else at the door is something that we all need to agree, at least mentally. And that's not easy all the time. It's not easy.
Yeah. So in terms of the process of your engagement, like a business reaches out to you and say that, okay, hey, any of those three things, whether there's some delay or there is some kind of a
defect or deviation,
defect, they come up with a problem essentially, and they say, we are having some issues, would you be able to help? And then the engagement starts. So what is typically your process? I guess data gathering, as you mentioned, is one of the big things, but how do you sort of?
Well, the first thing we need is to have, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that it will be good to understand a little bit what your process is of the whole engagement.
Let's assume that the contract has been signed, put that aside, right?
Okay.
So typically we need somebody in their team who's, because we're not employed, they're not full-time there. We need somebody in their time as in the team as the go-to person for the data. Okay. Particularly in remote environment in the last 10 years. In early environment, we're there, they give us systems, they look at it, we can see that. And so in today's world, we need somebody who's a liaison in data transfer. So that's one thing. Then you'll be able to define the logbook. What does a logbook look like? How does a process log look like? If the output is to get some particular product, what are the inputs? Okay, if it's a manufacturing, temperature, pressure, if it's a service industry, what's the request in the order, where's the location? You have all these inputs. So those inputs need to be on a log so that we can mathematically correlate that when this input changes, there's not much of a difference in the product. Whereas if this input even changes by a slightest fraction, it can have a very sensitive impact on the output. So first of all, understanding and recognizing what are the inputs. Second is understanding the variance influence of those inputs on the output. Okay, so the root cause analysis of available data from the history itself is a great mine to go work with to solve these problems. Okay, and then we're also talking about preventing these problems, putting systems in place so that even if somebody was to mistakenly sabotage, they can do it, right? So two things, right? So that's how it starts. The process logbook, getting the manager's commitment, having a person as a liaison working either in presence or remote, and showing them what they can do by questioning in a Socratic way rather than telling them. Those are some mantras very common to the world of Socratic consulting, where you want to transfer the knowledge, rather be the person who has the knowledge, and they can depend on me each time, right? To not be right to do that. So that's how the process works. And then typically it's a pilot project, not more than 90 days, because in 1 quarter you can see money, right? The books, the finance council books. So we keep a pilot project not more than 90 days. Typically, depending on the frequency of data, in 30 days you can figure this out most of the time if you have the data. If you have the data very infrequently, that means you're not defining the right metric. Okay. So then we should make sure you define the right metric. So you have frequent data so that you can look at that, do root cause analysis, and start suggesting solutions, and they can test it and it works, right? So data definition, metric quantification, measurement systems, process log, and root cause analysis. These are just ground fruit to arms reaching fruit solutions. We're not even talking about high fruit and sweet fruit. Talking about ground fruit and arms, low hanging fruit. And they lead to a significant level in revenue, customer satisfaction, internal cost, and just that employee, retention. So that's one way. Most of the time it works that way, whether it's a corporation.
That's pretty good, because when you are involving the other team in a way that they are on board in terms of thinking that we are part of the solution or part of the solution finding, in that case, number one, the resistance is not there. And number two, they own it. So there is a higher probability of them supporting whatever support is required, whether it's like, gathering the data or bringing the different members on the same frequency. It just helps when people as a group own it, rather than thinking that, okay, here is and especially with the external company, you say, oh, these consultants are coming and they are telling us this to do. We know what we are doing. We know our stuff. The problem is not this, problem is not that. But then when the discussion goes as part of the, we think that, okay, let's see what we can do, and you discuss more logically, and they are already on board. In that case, it becomes easier.
You do have resistance. Let's admit that. There's technical resistance, there's political resistance, and there is cultural resistance. Usually, technical resistance is there because somebody's been there, they've been doing it. So typically, what we do is we bring the person who's resisting the most to the front, and we ask them what is the challenge. Because from a change management point of view, when you bring the person who has the maximum resistance and convince them, everybody's going to follow. The problem comes when you don't address them. So you don't get the enrollment, so that when you leave, you're not going to get the transfer of knowledge. So it's always better to bring the person who's resisting the most, because he has something to say, he or she. They're so vested in the process, so religious about it. They've seen it every day. And so we need to make sure that they are heard, and whatever ideas they give are valid. So then the question is, what's the norm of engagement? No name calling, no blaming, things like that. Forming, norming, storming, using data and a decision. If we don't have the data, let's go collect the data. So the norms of engagement change rather than how else. And because as an outsider, I do not know them, they don't know me, I don't have any bias or prejudice to anybody. They trust, and also the fact that I do not know the subject matter expertise allows them to say that I'm not saying something because I have more experience. So that's a very nice, comfortable zone to be in, rather than inside the company somebody has experience, right? So it's my duty to create that ambiance, okay, so that they participate and they work. And then when you leave, they continue to do that when the management provides a system. So that's the whole idea. If you're doing it 90% of the time correctly, there's not anything new that I'm going to be saying, but I'm going to show you the tools to find out where things are going wrong and how you can prevent it.
Yeah, makes sense. Very
Yeah.
good. So I would like to ask you, you have been a very successful person, helped so many businesses. What is really the key to your success? And the reason I'm asking, say there's a new business owner who's just starting up the business and is looking for some kind of, best practices or just general suggestions, advice, what I should be doing or what I should not be doing. Maybe, if you share the key to your success, that may inspire some people to know that, okay, yeah, I really like this idea, or like your sort of method that helped you achieve the success.
Right. Just like we have y equals a function of x, right?
Hmm.
My success is a function of failures as well.
Yeah.
So I'm honored to admit that, because you keep thinking that something happens and by random you win, and you think that's a model, then lead to a larger level of failure. So failures were there. Fortunately, they were not irreparable failures. Okay. They were not so significant that everything just crashed. But they were success failures to remind me that, hey, you missed this.
Yeah.
And you should have sought mentorship. Okay. So typically, like we talked about, infatuation with the DIY kit, do it yourself, do it myself, is typically a source of number one failure. Number one source. Okay. And most people don't have that luxury of having a person to challenge them. Right. And I was very fortunate. Today that's available. You can find mentors. Today means last 10 years through networking, you can find that. The challenge with people is that I should say, they don't know that they don't know that they should be not using the DIY. Because I know what I know, that's 10%. I know what I don't know, that's 5%. But what about this? I don't know. I don't even know what I don't know. That's a large majority of success. So when you meet somebody who's a total stranger, there's a likelihood that they will lead you to something that you didn't know that you didn't know. Now that you know what you didn't know that you didn't know, confusing, right? So it's important to break that sector. And once you break that sector, that what I know that I know becomes larger. And typically the people that are very close to us, they're so biased and so emotionally invested, they don't want to point out what we didn't know that we didn't know.
Yeah.
So you got to reach out and always say, hey, what am I doing wrong? What could be go wrong? And it's always to kind of simulate the process and see where something is wrong, is to be open, right? So that means finding the right mentor is an input.
Yeah.
Right? So that has helped me significantly. Other than that, being open, it's not about closing the contract to the customer. That's important. Is the relationship.
Yeah.
In some cultures, you got to drink a lot of tea. And once you drink a lot of tea, you're done. You're done. In some cultures, you close the contract, then you go play golf. Okay. So, figuratively speaking, in some cultures, you know somebody, you bring them in. All situations, what I have seen is engage in a pilot project. Because you want to keep the reputation of the person who brought you in the same as when you leave, or better, not worse.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's keeping them as a customer is so it's difficult. However, that's so important. So remaining. So that has helped a lot. And they're not overcommitting. Be realistic. Don't overcommit, and do what you can. And otherwise, because overcommit and then you lose credibility.
Yeah.
So it's get help. And many times are subcontracted. When I can't do it, I subcontracted. And we provided the service, and actually turned out to work better.
Yeah.
So don't hesitate to be subcontracted yourself. Don't hesitate to subcontract. And try to see if you can work with the executive decision maker in the organization, so that you're not fighting with the resistance in between and getting the commitment from the top, right? So that C-level engagement is important. It won't happen overnight. It happens at a certain point as you gradually build credibility.
Right.
Yeah. So those are some factors that I acknowledge to my mentors and peers and associates and clients who also give recommendations on LinkedIn is still acting as an input
Mhm.
for current and future possibilities.
Yeah. No, very good suggestions. So, Dr. Shree Nanguneri, we are almost towards the end of the show. So, if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, first they can go to my LinkedIn and look for Shree Nanguneri, and you have the whole 9 yards there. They can reach out. They can send a invitation, or they can send a dialogue message that I heard you through this. It's easier when they say I heard you through the show, Mr.
Mhm.
Saini. That way I can relate. Or they can go to the website mgbs.com. The easier one is a LinkedIn. It's in a space. Or they can reach out to Shree.Nanguneri at mgbs.com. You can email me, letting me know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And then we can set up a time, talk, and do it the way that they need to get it done.
Excellent. So mgbs.com is the website. And this was really interesting. And, thank you for your time and sharing your journey and what all you do and how you are helping businesses worldwide.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sain. I appreciate this honor and privilege. And we look forward to meeting your team in the near future.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah,
So,
have a great Friday and nice weekend.
Yeah, you too. So, friends, I'll be back next week. Until then, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.